When it comes to people getting the bag, Jaylen Brown just got the bag. But was he worth it? Let's talk about it. Listen, you're rocking with the best. It's your boy P.kidd. P.kidd Talks NBA. Let's get into it, man. Listen, Jaylen Brown right now has successfully, and shout out to his agent, become the highest paid player in NBA history. He has the richest contract in NBA history. 304 over 5. It's a ridiculous contract. And you know what? It's not one where I'm going to sit there and give out a bunch of hate saying he doesn't deserve it. You're worth whatever someone's willing to pay you. I fully believe that. If you can negotiate something, someone's willing to give you that bread for it, that's what you're worth. But once you sign that number, hey, price goes up, right? Now, is he ultimately worth that? If you want to compare him to other people, even the people on his team, probably not. Is he worth what Jason Tatum brings to the Celtics? Now, here's a very interesting thing for me, because I've been up and down on it. I've always said that if I was a Celtics, I would roll with Jaylen Brown over Jason Tatum. Here was my reasoning. I felt like Jaylen Brown was a better two-way player at the time. I felt like he was a better two-way player who was very conscious of the fact that he didn't have the ultimate green light. And some people from Boston helped me appreciate that. Baby, that's not too far off, but it ain't absolutely true either. So I was like, all right, cool. It's something I can sit there and I'll back up off of, right? But ultimately, that's what I see. I see Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum ultimately having a lot of redundancy, meaning they both do a lot of the same thing. There's not a lot that Jason Tatum does defensively that Jaylen Brown doesn't do. And the one thing that Jason Tatum does offensively, which is shoot threes. He does shoot better. He does shoot threes better than Jaylen Brown. But I think Jaylen Brown is better at getting to the bucket, getting downhill, and things of that nature. That doesn't mean that they can't coexist. I just don't see it. I think they do too much of the same thing. Jason Tatum's just taller. And at this point, considerably so. People are saying he's 6 foot. Jaylen Brown's, 6'6". So, I mean, I can see why people want it. But how they play the ball, how they need the ball, those two ball-dominant players, to me, can't coexist. It has to be not a wing. It can't be two wings that dominate that way. It has to be a point in a wing, or a point in a center, or a wing in a center. I haven't seen two wings at the same time dominate like that and it work out. Even with Golden State, people will say, well, you could say that Steph was a shooting guard and so was Clay. Listen, totally different scenario, and no one will put Clay over Steph. And no one would say that Clay could do what Steph does. There's not a lot of redundancy. They just complement each other very, very well, and they both are like freakishly good at that. But again, like it don't really happen that particular way, with them both being able to be so dominant at the on the ball. Most people will sit there and hear that comment and say, well, Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan were definitely two wings. You look at Scottie Pippen being on the wing as a 3 and then Jordan being the shooting guard. But guess what? There was a clear alpha in that situation. You knew exactly where the ball was going. And Scottie Pippen didn't have the bag Michael Jordan had. There was a clear gap of proficiency there. It's a clear gap in efficiency, too, when it came to who was the guy and who was that doesn't exist for me on the Boston Celtics. It wasn't really clear. So that's why I made that statement. Now, I could be wrong, right? I'm willing to be wrong. I'm not going to make it seem like I'm the expert or the Boston Celtics whisperer. I don't give a goddag about that. At the end of the day, he got paid. Now, what does this ultimately mean? How does this work with the new CBA? How does this work with that team being able to keep them? Well, either they have to gut everything else eventually to stay considerably under some of the aprons and stuff they're going to hit, because Jason Tatum is going to re-up while Jaylen Brown is on this particular contract. And if they're hell-bent on keeping these two together, they're going to eat up a lot of that cap. Unless the cap goes up tremendously, which I know the new CBA has provisions for, but it's not necessarily... Like, that's still a lot of money tied into two players. I mean, we're at the point where we're talking about 110, 120 tied into just two players, not three, just two. That's a lot of cash. And again, they all are doing the same thing. This is a much different scenario than I would even look at from the Phoenix Suns perspective, because I think the Phoenix Suns, KD is clearly a different player and the ultimate Swiss Army knife when it comes to basketball. He does a lot different than Devin Booker. I mean, they're all both scorers, but how they get their money, how they get to it, and how they're respected at their particular positions is just totally different. Bradley Beal may be running. We'll see how that works. But again, I see this being a lot different than that, because if you really look at how the numbers boil down, with everyone else they have, well, maybe it's the exact same situation. Let me recant that. Maybe it's the exact same situation. Maybe I spoke a little too soon. I was being a little hasty on that one. My fault. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things where it makes it, you have to wonder, do they do too much of the same thing to be worth the money that they have? I can make an argument that Bradley Beal can run point. I can make an argument that Devin Booker is the clear 2 guard on that particular team. I know for a fact we know who the clear 3 is on that particular team, or 4, depending on how you play him. Kevin Durant's the ultimate Swiss Army's knife. You don't know what that is on the Boston Celtics. So there's what I have to ask the question. How do you build around it? What does this ultimately mean? Things of that nature. And those are the questions I want to ask you all. They paid him. They kept him. Good job. Do you think that this is going to work out long term? I want to see your answers in the comments, man. I'll be in there with you. I also want to hear this particular thing. This is something that's come up. I was in New York when this trade happened, and this is something I heard on New York radio. So this is not just something of my own initiative. I really wish I had the I was in an Uber, and the guy was a sports fan, and we were talking about it. He actually recognized me from the breeze, so check that out. But I want to know how you all feel. Do you think this is something that ultimately they will set up to trade Jaylen Brown? Now, I don't know exactly how that will work, or if that's even possible, but I can see down the line that they're setting it up so that he can actually be used as a trade package for more assets to put around Jason Tatum. Now, that was a question that, again, I don't know exactly how the new CBA will work with that, or if it even allows that type of move. But for conversation's sake, if it does, is this a Dame move? Is this a make the money even so we can get Dame? Because it matches exactly what Portland was asking for. Legit question that was asked in New York. So shout out to those individuals, man. New York is considered the mecca of basketball, even though I can make the argument of Chicago. Legitimate question, because if you look at the money, you look at what Dame is ultimately going to be getting paid, you look at what they asked for, young star with a couple picks, plausible. Not saying it's likely, but it's plausible. But I want to hear your thoughts on that too. I want to hear how you ultimately feel. Again, whether it's love, whether it's hate, put it in the comments. All we know is Jaylen Brown, who is not the best player in the NBA, is now the richest player in NBA history. Who do you think is going to break the bank next? Talk about that more next time, y'all. Peace.